back, everyone, to another episode of the Adventure Box podcast, brought to you by these guys, Historical Conquest. Actually, I'm the CEO, so I can't say these guys. It's us. So, Historical Conquest is a set of games based on education, but where we do it a different twist. We do a 70% fun, only 30% educational, because the more you like it, the more you'll be back. We want you to come back so that you learn every single time you come. You're going to learn something new. So, here we go. Today we're going to be talking about something very well known. If you know anything about Mesopotamia, you'll know about two things, or you'll have heard of two things. One is the Code of Hammurabi. Now, it's interesting because this is not the oldest code that was written. That was actually Ur-Nammu, and we had already just talked about that. Probably, I think it was last week. But the Code of Hammurabi is actually more profound. It's more distinctive. It's more populated throughout a larger area. We'll go over why. The second thing you probably heard about was King Nebuchadnezzar II. Yeah, the second Nebuchadnezzar. The reason why you might know him is if you read the Bible or you know Jewish history, you'll know about King Nebuchadnezzar. That's right, we're about to go over that. I won't spoil it for you, so stay tuned for how this is all connected. First off, we're going to travel back in time. We're going to travel back to a place called Babylon. Here, we will explore its rise under Hammurabi, who is the famous lawgiver, and its late dominance under King Nebuchadnezzar I. Yeah, the first. We'll go into King Nebuchadnezzar II afterwards. But this is actually it's King Nebuchadnezzar I who brought the destruction upon Jerusalem. Okay, so let's start going into this. So the rise of Babylon. What is Babylon? At this point, about 1792 BC, it was a simple city-state. It was a large city that basically had its own control. The leadership and everything was inside of Babylon. Then there was a person by the name of Hammurabi. Hammurabi actually inherited this modest-looking, small little city kind of kingdom and actually made it into what it became a little bit afterwards. We'll go over that in just a second. He was a skilled diplomat and military strategist. Now, what makes this very important to know is it was through him that he took over nearly the entire Middle East, or a large portion of it, including Turkey, Syria, and so forth, all the way down into Persia. By forming alliances and waging wars in specific places, he unified much of Mesopotamia and creating basically Babylon. Babylon the kingdom, not just Babylon the city-state. So his empire stretched from the Persian Gulf, and part of Persia, all the way to the Assyrian heartland. This encompassed major cities like Ur, Akkad, and Mari. Remember, Akkad, there was Sargon of Akkad. If you don't remember him, go back to last week. We talked about him. He was actually one of the first and most expansive conquerors of his time, because he was first. There wasn't much history of conquerors coming before him, but Sargon was the one that actually got it started. Now, if you remember Ur was a city that supposedly was actually just before the flood. You know, the Great Flood. And I'm not saying it's biblical at all. I'm actually saying it's Mesopotamian. It's also biblical as well. But Mesopotamia has plenty of records saying that there was actually a flood. And Ur was one of the wicked cities that basically spurred its destruction. And then Mari, I actually don't have that much information about Mari. Look it up. It's a great thing to look at. All these things are very interesting. They have all great backgrounds. So please look it up. Now let me tell you a little bit of the geography about it. So let me bring up, here we go. This is Iraq. Over here is Iran. So right here is where Mesopotamia was. So if I scoot out, there you go. There's the Middle East. Skirt in, Mesopotamia. Going any further, this is this part of the city-state, Babylon Archaeological Hills, which is really cool. Let's check this out. So this is, I am 99% sure this is a replica. I did not actually look into it. I don't have the time to right now. You could, if you want to do the research, look into the, let's see, Babylon Archaeological Hills and see if that's a replica. I'm pretty sure it is. But it basically shows you that these walls, the way that they're set up, and you see they go forever, are actually walls where people can stand on, shoot arrows down from, throw things down from, much like a medieval castle you'd see in Europe. But this, again, is in Iraq. Okay, so let's go to the geography of it, a little more of the geography. If you look, you're going to see all this greenery in this map. Now, if you're not looking at the map, you're going to see that you have the Tigris over here and the Euphrates River over here. And Mesopotamia means between two cities, or between two rivers. So this green area was because there were so many floods. The floods would come in, wash out the area, but also bring with it the silt that was left in the rivers, and that would fertilize this land so the next crop was even stronger than before. Let's talk a little bit about the culture. Under Hammurabi, Babylon became the center of science, literature, and also religion. They actually had patron gods who would actually look over their cities. Remember we were talking about Mesopotamia? They had the ziggurats. And on these tall structures, they would have a temple. That temple was dedicated home for that patron god. So for Babylon and Hammurabi, it was the god of called Marduk. Marduk rose to prominence during the Babylonian reign. So during the time that Hammurabi took over and began to grow, he pushed the patron god of Marduk. And I'm pretty sure that actually started off in the city-state of Babylon, but then spread out throughout all of Mesopotamia and anywhere that Babylon reached. So Hammurabi was basically the administrator. He was the governor. He was the one that ruled over this kingdom. You could also say not as much a governor, probably more like a dictator. He was in command. He was the conqueror. If you didn't listen to him, he'd conquer you. But was he as bad as some other conquerors that we know? Let's see, Timur the Lame, Genghis Khan. Let's go back to Hitler. No, I think actually Hammurabi was probably a little bit less. He was more of a just and wise, I don't know about just, wise leader. The reason why I said it is because he's actually one of the first, besides the code of Ur-Nammu, he was the one that actually created the Hammurabi code, the code of Hammurabi. Now there is some difference between these, and I'll give it to you in just 1 second. This is his greatest achievements. This is a set of laws that all of Babylon listened to and obeyed. It was inscribed into a black basalt stela. You remember the stelas that are in Egypt? We have in Mesopotamia. We have in Persia. We have them all over the place. So they are still around to today. So we'll dive deeper into this a little bit later. Let's go into the next part, which is very important, is what is the difference between the Code of Hammurabi and the Code of Ur-Nammu. Now, the Code of Ur-Nammu was, of course, about 300 years before the Code of Hammurabi. So this is ancient Mesopotamia, and you have these two codes. But by the time, again, 300 years later, by the time Hammurabi came around, it's like every time we talk about a new civilization, I always remind everyone, whenever a new conqueror comes in, they try to change two different things, sometimes even a third thing. Let's go through them. What's the first thing they do? They change the history. They come in and they want to make a history that basically benefits them, whether it's puts the people more under control and take away their thoughts of independence or such. The second thing they take away, the conqueror does, is they take over the religion. They try to change the religion so it's based on something that you promote, your religion. So for Hammurabi, it was Marduk. Now, Marduk was the patron god of Babylon, and when it got beyond the city-states, it basically became the patron god of the civilization of Babylon. Okay, so what is the difference? Who was Ur-Nammu? He was a king of a city-state called, that's right, Ur. We had just talked about that. During the Third Dynasty, this is about 2100 BC. Some things to understand about Ur-Nammu. So again, we're not quite sure if the leader's name was Ur-Nammu, or if the Nammu meant leader, or if it was actually his name. But as well as we can tell, the code of Ur-Nammu is the leader of Ur. Ur-Nammu, leader, Ur. So this code that was set was one of the earliest recorded laws ever inscribed. And it was based on fairness and restrictions. For example, there were fines for common punishments instead of physical harm. So Ur-Nammu was very different than a lot of the others. It wasn't a you steal something, you lose a hand. Ur-Nammu was more of you pay a fine. If a man knocks out a tooth of another man, he shall pay 2 shekels of silver. Okay. Let's just think about this. In this day and age, if you were given that chance where, okay, 2 shekels and I get to punch the heck out of this guy, there might be some people that are willing to pay 2 shekels of silver. You need to know, though, 2 shekels of silver is not just a day's worth of silver. It's like a lot of silver. It's a good amount of your earnings. So if you're rich, it's great because you're like, I can punch out this guy. Boom! 2 shekels, done deal. No problem. If they try to strike you, they're not going to be able to pay up. That's when they go to jail. So Ur-Nammu, that code, aimed to create harmony and to prevent vengeance-based justice. So this is again the first one because there was a slew of vengeance-based justice. Basically because no one wrote down a law. If no one writes down a law, then the law is basically what you hear. And if you tell me what the law is, the next week I come by and you said it was this. No, I didn't. Yeah, you said it's this, so it's this right now. No, it's not. And the butting of heads over and over and over again. So how did the Code of Hammurabi come in, and did it actually make a difference? So it was a lot more extensive. So the Code of Ur-Nammu was on a cylinder. You could actually read it all the way around the cylinder. When it came to the Code of Hammurabi, it was so large it actually had to be inscribed on a stela. Now the stelas are usually, 8 to 10 feet tall, larger than a person, almost the size of an ancient Greek pillar, because there's smaller ones of those too. Okay, think arm reach. You stretch out your arms as much as you can stretch. Okay, roll around in a circle. You see that circular motion? How you're actually designing a circle horizontally? That's how thick the stela was. Most stelas were. So that thick stela had all of the codes. It was more extensive. It had over 282 laws covering trade, poverty, marriage, and crime. Ur-Nammu focused mostly on crime. This one covered all of life. Again, like I was saying, the Code of Hammurabi, or Hammurabi himself, was more like a dictator. He had, these are the rules, I'm the one in charge, no one gets to decide. He might have had advisors, but you didn't elect your advisors. What if your president basically says, this is the law, and you have no say on it? Well, in the United States, you'd say that's against the law. Well, it is. In Mesopotamia, it was not. Now, interesting enough, you've heard of an eye for an eye, right? If I poke out your eye, you get my eye in return. That was actually a lot of the punishments of the Code of Hammurabi. So literally, you lose an eye, you lose a hand. There was a lot of different things. Even you break a bone. So if a man, here's an example. If a man pulls out another man's eye, his eyes shall be put out as well. Yikes. If he breaks another man's bone, his bone shall be broken as well. Ooh. But think of it this way. If the Code of Ur-Nammu was based on a financial fine, then yeah, the rich would get away with it. Yeah, I'll pay two shekels of silver, no problem. To punch out the guy's face, oh yeah, totally. I will knock some teeth out of him. And it might be, I might even get up to 6 or 8 shekels, but that's okay. I got my pay, and I'm rich, so I can give you 8 shekels of gold, or 8 shekels of silver. Sorry, silver. Yeah, this law with Hammurabi became more just because it didn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. Nobody wanted their bones broken. Nobody wanted their eyes put out. So I don't know if it was. I don't even want to think about it. What does that actually mean? Putting out an eye. Yeah, does that mean poking someone's eye out and oh, and it comes back? No. It means poking, shuffling around a little bit and pulling that out. Ooh. Zach, that's disgusting. Yeah, it is. But that's the law. You pop out someone's eye, they're going to pop out your eye too. So what would you think that would happen? What would happen to criminals? Well, I'll tell you one thing. You'd have less robberies. Because most likely, and I don't have it in front of me, I'm guessing that, remember where they talk, a lot of times they talk about the Middle East, and there's some parts of the Middle East that you steal something, you lose a hand. This was more likely what you'd get from Hammurabi. Now, of course, that's not eye for an eye, but that's a harsher punishment for a crime that's a financial crime. I don't know exactly. I haven't looked it up. Look it up. It's great. This is all good information. Okay, so Hammurabi's code emphasized the retributive justice. Basically, vengeance, almost again. So, you do something, I'm going to do it back to you. That's justice. The Ur-Nammu code leaned towards fines and compensation. If you put out my eye, I have to figure out how much you have to pay me because you put out my eye. Or if you broke my bone, I have to figure out how much I'd pay because you broke my bone. So you can see the kind of punishments that come from either one. Which one would you rather be living under if you were a criminal? Now let me ask you this again. Which one would you like to live under if you were a victim? I think it's pretty different. Now, question for you. One more question for you. These interactive questions. With those two rules, which one do you think brought down crime? And that was the point of Hammurabi. He wanted justice. He wanted crime to stop. And these days you actually have to wonder if some of our police officers, well, no, I don't say police officers. Nix the police officer part. Some of the judges actually want it to be cleared up. Do you think that judges actually want crime to stop when they basically let criminals out without bail? They let criminals out when they stole things, broke things, destroyed things. Yeah, they just let them out. Not exactly what we want to live under, right? No, not really. Okay, so those are the codes under Hammurabi and Ur-Nammu, but Hammurabi. Let's go to another part. Who is King Nebuchadnezzar the First? So I said the second, but this one's actually the first. There are two, but this one's the first. So fast forward through time a little bit. This is probably about the 6th century BC, and we were talking about the 21st was Ur-Nammu, and the 17th, 17. And Nebuchadnezzar is actually on the far end of this time period. And sorry, I actually have to make one little adjustment. I was actually talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Sorry, that is King Nebuchadnezzar II, which you've probably heard about. So when I was talking about that, it was all right what I was saying. It's just two different timelines. We are talking about King Nebuchadnezzar I today, and next week we will talk about King Nebuchadnezzar II. So let's go into who was King Nebuchadnezzar II, because sometimes it's overlooked because most people know about King Nebuchadnezzar II. Okay, so King Nebuchadnezzar the first, one of Babylon's most intriguing kings. This is what I was saying. He was so important, but not in the way that I presented it the first time. He plays a pivotal role in early resurgence of the Babylonian power. It was during around the 12th century, so about 1100 BC. From his military victories to his devotion to his god Marduk. These are all parts of what we're going to be talking about today. This is all about triumph, resilience, and cultural significance. So let's explore his legacy. So let's go first to who is Nebuchadnezzar the First. Let's get some context around this. Okay, background. Nebuchadnezzar the First ruled Babylon during the Second Dynasty of Ur, around 1125 to 1104 BC, circa. So it's around this time. This was a time of political fragmentation in Mesopotamia. Now, Babylon was vying for dominance against rival powers around them. So there's Elam, which is more, this is more of like Persia, and there's Assyria, which is northwest. So Assyria is in northern Mesopotamia, up here in this area. And so you have Mesopotamia taking over, Babylon taking over this Mesopotamian area, and you had the Assyrians that were basically very strong, very powerful, and then you had Elam, which was out here in this area, which is Persia, basically. And they wanted connection to the Gulf, but so did Mesopotamia as well to the Gulf. So you could see that there's a lot of confrontation that's going to be in this area, especially Elam and Babylon, as opposed to Assyria up here and Babylon. Assyria was just more over power. Elam was over survival and growth. So he was not the first Nebuchadnezzar, actually. This is the funny thing. I found this out when I paused this. I had to be reminded of this because I was going after the second. So Nebuchadnezzar, his name, Nabu, so Nebuchadnezzar, Nabu, protect my heir. That's his name. That's what it means. So Nebuchadnezzar, Nabu, protect my heir, was a testimony of the influence of Babylonian deities in royal titles. What? That's right. So his name was basically about the deity and that he was the protector of the deity's heirs. So he was the protector of Babylon. So during this time, you actually have Nebuchadnezzar the First, who decided that he was actually going to start conquering. He was going to start taking over these areas. So Babylon, before his reign, before Nebuchadnezzar's rise, Babylon had experienced a period of decline. The Kassites, who ruled Babylon for centuries, have been overthrown. So it went from, Hammurabi, Kassites, Nebuchadnezzar. They had been overthrown in the city's struggle to regain their former glory during this time. At the same time, the neighboring Elam posed the most significant threat, even more than Assyria. They raided Babylonian territories and even seized the sacred statues of Marduk, Babylon's chief deity. So it's really interesting. This is some of the things that are a little bit of background for you. Because what I'm going to be talking about is what you should know him for. Nebuchadnezzar the First, his reign is best remembered by his military prowess and his effort to restore Babylon's prestige. Now remember, Sargon and Akkad had taken over much of Syria, Turkey, and all the way down to the Persian Gulf, and then it was taken over. Hammurabi comes into play. He wants to control, But he doesn't. He solidifies the country himself. So he solidifies Mesopotamia and Babylon. And it's Nebuchadnezzar the First who spreads it out. So the first one is he leads a significant campaign against Elam, defeating the forces and also retrieving the statue of Marduk from them. So the first thing that comes to my mind is going to college and the stealing of mascots between different rival colleges. The college, somebody would drive down to the other college and during the night would steal the mascot of that rival college. And then that rival college would come back and steal it back, or even steal the other person's mascot. So, and this is usually before a football game. Here, there was no football game. Here, you steal a statue of a protector deity, a patron deity, and you're going to basically die. They're going to come in and they're going to attack you. They're going to take back those statues and they're going to kill everyone that comes in their way. So there's a lot more impact than there was in college. So the return of Marduk's statue symbolized the restoration of Babylon's honor and the divine favor with Marduk, which is why they had to do it. Nebuchadnezzar made that one of his first things he had to do because he wanted to become the known hero king. So other campaigns include Nebuchadnezzar also fought against the tribes in the Zagros mountains up here. These are the Zagros mountains. These are mountain tribes that come down and constantly attack Babylon all throughout generations. I mean, this was not just during Nebuchadnezzar's run, but Nebuchadnezzar fought against them in the mountains and North Mesopotamia and secured the border to reclaim their territory. And they used walls, much like you see what's going on right now. Donald Trump is creating walls on the southern border. He's probably not going to do one on the northern border because there's not as much traffic through there. But he knows at the southern border, there's a lot of traffic. If you had a civilization and you had this group of tribes that would constantly come down and destroy your cities, you'd probably want to put a wall there. The Romans did it. The Incans did it. The Mesopotamians also did it. So they create these walls so that those tribes trying to come over would have to match up with the army that Mesopotamia had on the way. So again, his battles stabilized Babylon and laid the groundwork for a resurgence in the major powers in Mesopotamia. Now let's go into one other thing I think we should talk about is Marduk. Who is this Marduk? Okay, beyond the military achievements of Nebuchadnezzar, his religious devotion was actually one of the biggest things. Marduk is not just a god. Interesting, huh? He was a symbol to Babylon itself. Think of it this way. You have a school mascot, right? Okay, a school mascot, if you're going to public school, or private school, or charter school, you'll have a mascot. That mascot brings pride to you, right? Well, they saw the same thing as the statue of Marduk. Marduk was not just a god, he was a symbol of their strength, much like a mascot of the college or such. So restoring that statue was the top priority for Nebuchadnezzar I, because if he did, he'd raise morale of his people and he could attack anywhere he wanted. What was the next thing? Like I was saying, every time a new leader comes into play, they might try to change it or they'll try to improve the history, the religion. Nebuchadnezzar was just the same. He rebuilt and enhanced the temples dedicated to Marduk, including the famous Esagila temple in Babylon. He also revived rituals for these and festivals for Marduk, basically reinforcing his supremacy. The more that they had to celebrate Marduk, the more they forgot about the other gods and they fell into line behind Nebuchadnezzar. The culture was behind it. The literature was written about it. The economy was even to it. So he basically reformed the taxation and trade of the Babylonian civilization, ensuring that Babylon's economy flourished. Wow, okay, that makes me, huh, that actually makes me think of Trump again. So this is another thing that Trump's doing. And I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is another thing he's doing. He's trying to stabilize, he's trying to reform the taxation and trade to ensure that Babylon's economy flourishes, which is why the people loved Nebuchadnezzar. Save their morale, save their religion and worship, and also economic stability, and secured the borders. Huh. It's funny, everyone likes to say, oh, it's just history. Why do we have to learn about it? Well, it's like they say, history is not repeated, but it definitely rhymes. What that means is that we might not have the exact same history as we did before, but it definitely comes close to the history that we have. So that is King Nebuchadnezzar I. We already talked about, just to recap, we talked about, first off, Hammurabi. He was the one that came in and turned a little city-state into an empire, a small empire. Well, during that time, he was just trying to solidify basically this area. Then you have others that came in and tried to destroy it, and that's when King Nebuchadnezzar I came in. Again, not the first and not the last Nebuchadnezzar. But he comes in and he secures the border. He strengthens the economy in here. And he brings back the religion from Elam back to the country. That's just very interesting. I never actually thought about it until we started talking, and now I can see a comparison between it. But remember, he's not the only one. Trump is not the only one. There's a lot of others that do exactly these things. Border, religion, economy. Basically, those are the three things. People want security. People want finances. They want their finances. They want to know if they work hard, they get paid well, and they have a secure financial freedom. And then finally, the last one. So security, finances. What was the last one? Oh yeah, religion. So according to Trump, he's very much praising God for saving him from assassination. Okay, there you go. The three things that Nebuchadnezzar did to make his people happy with him and to keep his civilization together is the same thing that Trump's doing right now. Now, was Nebuchadnezzar successful? A lot of the ways he was. He created things like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and such. So he created, well, actually, I think that was King Nebuchadnezzar II, actually. Okay, so maybe he didn't do the Hanging Gardens, but he did reunite his civilization, Babylon, and made it stronger. So these are just some things to think about while we wait for next week. So, no, not next week. For Thursday, the next time we meet, Thursday. Because Thursday, we're actually going to be talking about nothing else but something that's very important. This is the Assyrian dominance. And the reason why this is important is when Assyria comes in, they're the ones that take over. Let's see, we just talked about ancient Israel. They're the ones that go in and take over the kingdom of Israel, not Judah, the kingdom of Israel and the 10 tribes, and spread out the people. And there's a lot of other things to do with this. So stay tuned for Thursday. We're going to talk about this more. Thanks again, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.